going on, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast, Mass Media Hysteria. My name is Court. I am your host for the day. This, of course, is Chris.
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
Andris is not here again this week. Hopefully, he will be back next week. Here's how today's show is going to go. We've got a few topics that we're going to go through. First, we are going to be doing, as we've been doing the past few weeks, we're going to do a full spoiler review of the latest episode of the Falcon and Winter Soldier, episode 5, titled Truth. Then we are going to do a full spoilers review of the relatively new Bob Odenkirk action movie, Nobody. I say relatively new because it had sort of a limited theatrical run. Now it's on demand. If you don't want to be spoiled, when we get there, I'll put a time code on the screen so you know when to jump. I do have a spoiler-free review on my channel, so you can go check that out. Maybe I'll put a little card up there. Remind myself to do that when I'm editing. Excuse me. Then we're going to talk about Amazon's new Lord of the Rings series, which I don't think that's what it's going to be called, but it has reportedly a budget for the first season only of nearly $465 million, which is insane. And then finally, our podcasts come out on Mondays. We tape them on Sundays. So a week today, next Sunday, is the Oscars. So we are going to talk a little bit about how we're feeling about the Oscars this year, it being a bit of a weird year for movies, or it having 2020 having been a bit of a weird year for movies. And we're going to give sort of our picks who we think are going to win for some of the top categories. So that will be the show. So first off today, like I said, we're going to talk about Falcon and Winter Soldier, episode 5. Before we go into specific story beats, Chris, do you want to just tell me sort of your overall thoughts on this episode, where it lands for you in the series?
It's a good one for me. It's the penultimate episode, and it sort of feels like that. There's definitely some big chunks of the episode that do feel like we're setting up for the finale. The last shot in particular is definitely just like, tune in for the finale, which is kind of However, that being said, there's still a lot to like in this episode. And I think that it hit the beats of delivering the action that we want to see, that the fans like to see, as well as delivering some quality, character moments for Sam, for Bucky, and for others. So I thought it was quite good. Is it the best episode of the season? No, but I think it's kind of up there for me. I was enjoying the character moments personally. How about you?
I think I would say this episode it's my number 2. After last week's, I think was my favorite. I think this was number 2. I thought there was some really good action, but it was kind of a more quiet, character-driven episode, which I think is good because the finale is going to be really big and explosive, I'm sure.
Yeah, a lot of punchies.
Yeah, but we did get a lot of really great character work and some really great acting in this episode. So let's go right into it. Now, you made notes about the specific.
Yeah, I got him up right now. If
okay.
you want me to just kick it off. So right off the bat, we were talking about the action. You're right. It's really only relegated to the opening sequence, which is a killer opening. It's essentially, it takes place immediately after last week's episode ended, where John Walker just murked some dude just in broad daylight in the middle of Latvia, or I think they're in Latvia still, somewhere in Eastern Europe. And of course, everyone was filming him and stuff, and the show wasted no time. So John he's running out of there. He finds himself in a classic abandoned kind of warehouse thing. And he is reeling with what just happened, just the loss of his friend, similar to, how Steve lamented losing Bucky in the first Avengers. It was clear that however douchey John Walker gets, he's still a person and he's still legitimately loved and cared about Lamar. And of course, Bucky and Sam, they rock up, and they can't let it slide. And in a good way of showing kind of the difference between, these two, well, it's three characters, but these two separate ideologies, is how Sam and Bucky, they didn't come wanting to fight necessarily, but they were ready to fight. And right. I appreciated that they were, at the very least, they didn't come in guns blazing. They were just like, come on, man, just give us the shield. Let's talk about this. They wanted to help him. And then what followed was a pretty brutal fisticuff between the three of them. What did you think about it?
Well, one thing I did appreciate is, John Walker's had his sort of heel turn, but I did like, he was upset about Lamar, but I think we did see like regret there as well. Like I think
Yeah.
they're not just going like full villain, like there's still, and we see more of that later in the episode. There's still a very kind of human part of him. I do think he realized that he made a really horrible mistake. And but yeah, the fight goes off. One thing I will say, and this is something I've been complaining about, even though I really think Kerry Scoglin's directing in this show is
Mhm.
really good, the shaky cam in this fight is like, yeah, it's as bad as it's ever been on the show. There were moments in that fight I couldn't tell who was who because it was so much. And I also noticed, we're not even really going to talk about this scene too much, but when the Flag Smashers get back to the place and they see that the GC
The GRC.
the GRC has like closed it down,
Mhm.
that's a dialogue scene, and it was still handheld and shaky. And I was like, I get I get wanting to do it in an action scene because it kind of makes you feel like boots on the ground, but why in a dialogue scene? Like it was so unnecessary. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I thought the fight was really good aside from the way it was shot. Um, just Bucky getting like his arm getting electrocuted and being out of the fight for a while.
Mhm.
John ripping Sam's wings off was
Ooh, that's brutal.
bonkers.
Mhm.
Um, I kind of wish it had gone on a little bit longer, and I was surprised that they kind of won the fight. Well, I guess everybody kind of ended up on the ground, but
Mhm.
I'd been talking to a buddy about this, and we had sort of thought that this episode they would try and take him on, and he would like wipe the floor with them, and then in the finale they'd fight him again, and then they would win.
Yeah.
I guess kind of everybody loses in this fight. Like they're all kind of down for the count at the end.
I still took it as Sam and Bucky kind of winning at the end, but just kind of by like the skin of their teeth. You're
Right.
right in that everyone was kind of at the end, but I think the final blow was dealt by Sam. He had the shield and he kind of like launched himself and whacked him.
Right.
And so it was more like they got him down, they got him to stop coming at him, and they took the shield from him. But you're right, it wasn't like they stood victorious over him, like we did it. It was clearly took a lot out of him. And you're right, it's ordinarily, I mean, maybe it's good that it's kind of bucking, no pun intended, kind of conventions. But you're right. Usually in this point in the story, you kind of have the characters at their lowest point,
Yeah.
so that it's a bit more triumphant when they kind of like when they kind of come back at the end and they have like a rematch. However, I understand why they went this route. Because they needed to have Sam get the shield back.
Right.
It's at this point they definitely needed Sam to get the shield back. And without jumping ahead, because we'll talk about it. There's multiple montages to talk about, but this episode, far more than anything else, has just solidified that Sam is going to be Captain America.
Yeah.
And him getting the shield is integral to that. Because even at the end of Endgame, they gave him the shield, but I think even for fans, there was still some question of like, is he gonna be the new Captain America? Is he gonna be the Falcon, but just with the shield? Like, there was some question of what specifically they were going to do. This episode, was like, nope, he's gonna be Captain America. Before we move on, I do want to agree with you as well that the shaky cam, here's the thing, it wasn't just the shaky cam during the fight that irritated me. It's the rapid fire editing
Yeah.
that I'm not a big fan of. This is something that happens mostly in action scenes, but it's something that I've noticed in a lot of modern movies, a lot of modern studio films, is that the average shot length is so short. Like
Mhm.
I mean, for anybody that's interested, if you go through the decades, like the average shot length of how long in between cuts has just been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And even in conversation, it's like 2 seconds of like, here's someone's face, here's someone's face, here's someone's face. Like it keeps cutting. And it's kind of like, just slow it down a hair. Like I don't know. But in the fighting especially, it was really noticeable where it's like half of like you get half a second of this, a half a second of that, everything's shaky. So it was kind of like a mixture of like, this is an interesting fight. I like the choreography and they did some interesting things of like, how they were teaming up. I wish they just kind of held the camera still a bit and just didn't cut as much. And I think it still would have been as entertaining.
Well, that's the thing I always think about. I mean, if you're gonna put all this work into the choreography and the training and all that, like
Uh,
show it to us. Let us see it.
yeah, this is not a a knock against Carrie Scogland specifically because I've seen it from a lot of, like I said, modern kind of Hollywood productions where it's if it's a director that's not necessarily known for doing action, it there seems to be a lack of trust of just letting the choreography and just letting the scene play out. And I think they try to overcompensate. They're like, well, I want to make it visceral, so I'm going to shake the camera. I want to make it seem brutal and fast, so we got to cut soon. And usually when there are directors that are more confident in the action, that's when they kind of lock the camera down more shots are more in wide and they just kind of let it play out because they're more confident in letting the choreography and the actors performances or the stunt actors performances speak for itself.
You can
Yeah,
actually, we talk about Nolan a lot because we're fanboys, but even if you look at like his Batman trilogy, you can see that he learned as he went along because Batman
exactly.
Begins, it's really quick. And I think part of that was stylistic, particularly that scene where he's fighting all the people at the docks because they're just low level thugs. And when Batman's kicking your ass, you don't know what's going on. You just know you're in a lot of pain.
Mhm.
But even in that movie, like even the big fights when he's fighting Ra's al Ghul and whatever, it's really quick cut. And then
Yeah.
you jump to like Dark Knight Rises and the fight with Bane. It's like long takes and wide shots. And yeah,
That's
it's
a perfect example. I mean, you and I have probably talked about that specifically. Just kind of we as we went through the Nolan trilogy on forums, just kind of like speculating and talking about every little detail. That is something as well. Like Batman Begins was Nolan's fourth film, I believe, and it was the first like action film that he'd
yeah.
done. And you can see the progression. Like you said, very quick, fast cuts, shaky cameras as hell. It got lessened in the Dark Knight, but then it got even less in the Dark Knight Rises, where, like you said, there was at that point he was shooting. The fight scenes between Bane and Batman were shot in long wides, long shots, wasn't quick cutting. And like I said, I think that comes with the more experience you have with these types of action scenes. Um, I think the more confident you are in just letting it play out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so not to talk too much about that because it was a quick fight. One last thing I will say about it is how violent it is, and this is something that I've been saying it every week, so it's not like necessarily super surprising. But there's a moment where they break John Walker's arm,
Yeah.
and you see it, and it's
Mhm.
violent. And like I said, I'm not against it. I love body horror. I love big violent movies and stuff. But it is surprising. I'm watching a show on Disney Plus, and I'm not saying you don't have to go this far, but it is kind of like I'm surprised that they were like, okay, sure, this can be on our Disney Plus channel.
For me, it's not even the fact that it's on Disney Plus. It's just I don't think the MCU has ever gone this violent. So it
Yeah,
really just it continues to surprise me because it stands out.
for sure. Yeah.
But for this kind of like espionage series and Bucky, having been essentially like a serial killer, it makes sense. And I think it
Yeah,
works.
totally. Yeah, this is for this show, it's earned.
Right.
And
S
yeah, so moving on real quick, there was a quick thing of Sam after the fight. His wings are wrecked. Who's his buddy? He has that military buddy come up to him.
Oh yeah. I can't remember his name.
I don't want to.
Torres? I think it's Torres.
Torres sounds correct. While I'm kind of scrolling through, yeah, it's Joaquin Torres is the character's name. So essentially, it was a cute little touch, setting stuff up for longtime fans of the comics, who probably picked this up right away. I had to kind of like read about it because I had a theory, which was correct, which essentially the wings were wrecked. Joaquin Torres comes up, they kind of talk about it, and Sam's walking away with the shield, essentially metaphorically, taking up the Captain America mantle. And then Torres asks him, like, "Hey, what about your wings?" And Sam turns to him, "Keep them." And so that's a little nod to the comics because apparently, that character Joaquin Torres in the comics does become the Falcon at some point.
Okay.
So I like that. It's sort of this passing of the mantle where Sam started as kind of the Falcon, kind of Captain America's sidekick, and then he became the Captain America himself. And now Torres, who is just a soldier at this point, is seemingly going to be the Falcon. He's going to be a bigger player going forward, which I'm all for. Cool. He seems like a cool guy. I'm all for more diversity when it comes to the heroes.
Sure. I do want to jump back to the fight for a second because
Oh yeah, sure.
there's something I wanted to mention.
Mhm.
There was a great little moment. It was just one shot, but it was like there was so much there. But at one point, just as the fight's sort of getting started, John Walker says, like, we could have been a team. And the camera just cuts to the shield with the blood on it. And
Mhm.
I thought that was a very clever, like, visual clue of like, that's a really cool way of showing, because of what he just did, how different these two groups of dudes are and how there was never really much of a chance
No,
they were ever going to be a team, you
no,
know?
no, no, no. There's no cohesion there. There's no
Yeah.
buddy. So
Anyway,
yeah,
moving on, but
yeah. So yeah. So jumping ahead from that, then we get essentially uh John Walker in court. He's back stateside. He's in Washington D.C. just getting chewed out by some grumpy old white dudes. But I appreciated it because I think there was a little bit of a question at the end of last episode of like, how is this going to play out? And it played out, I think, pretty realistically to an extent of like he's a decorated war hero. It's I don't know enough about military law, but I like the fact that they were like, you're not Captain America anymore. You're being stripped of this title, this, that. Um, Sort of just dressing him down. And although I think he's deserving of it because of what he did. There is also something interesting of how he's saying like I've given my entire life to the military. I've given my entire life to you, the government, and you're just like just wiping the floor with me and just in not giving me any of the not letting me keep any of the titles or the recognition. And that's hard, man. It's like I said, I think this character in particular deserves it, but it is sort of interesting just how it's commentary on how one person just dedicated his life to a cause for them to just like turn their back on him like in an instant. Yeah.
yeah,
Do
and
you have any thoughts on that?
well, and yeah, I messaged you about this, but um, this show's gone pretty heavily on like the racial divide in the States, but I thought that
Hmm.
was a really interesting commentary on how, and I don't think we're a lot better about it in Canada, but
Hmm.
how a lot of times in America, like the government just treats veterans like they're nothing. They
For sure.
completely forget about them. There's no support for them.
Yeah.
And I thought this was kind of an interesting way to like touch on that a little bit.
Hmm. For sure. I agree. It's sort of not undermined, but like it's hard. It's also hard not to feel like the dude deserved it because of what he did, but also because he threw a big old tantrum in the
Mhm.
middle of the thing. I deserve it. It's never a good look when you're just shouting. So he walks off. He's talking to his wife, and she's trying to console him, and he's still like lamenting what's going on. And then we get the big cameo or the biggish the cameo of the episode. You and I were talking how leading up there was some talks from people in the production that there's going to be a cameo in episode 5. I think they learned their lesson a little bit because I don't from what I was reading they didn't hype it up too much. They weren't like holy crap you're not even going to believe who's
Right.
coming. But they were like hey someone's coming. They're from the comics. It's a character from the comics, and it's going to be played by a recognizable actor. And thought you and I were talking about it. They're like, could it be Chris Evans again? No, I don't know about him. Could it be Oscar Isaac? I don't know if that really makes sense. Because we were still thinking too big. But essentially, who it was Elaine Bennis. It was Julia Louis Dreyfus playing what's the character's name? It's like Allegra. Let me see.
Something Valentina. I don't. She had like four names.
Yeah, essentially it's going to be I think she's in the comics later becomes known as like Madam Hydra. So she's a well-established character in the comics. She sort of started off as sort of like a working with Shield. She was kind of like a secret agent-esque as well. She had some kind of relationship with Nick Fury, but then just kind of, does her own thing, is kind of like corporate bad guy. But I was pleasantly surprised. It was one of those things where, I think initially I was expecting a big cameo, someone that was like, oh, Julia Louis Dreyfus is not who I expected, but it was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, totally.
I love her. I think she's terrific. I'm a massive Seinfeld fan. She's terrific in Veep, so I'm all for it for her being in anything. And I'm glad that it wasn't just like a one and done. It seems like two things. One, it seems like they're setting her up for much more to do later on, which is cool. You know, is she if Elaine is going to be a main villain in Marvel, why not?
Yeah, I'm into it.
That sounds fun. But something I read that was kind of interesting is that this was not initially going to be where she premiered the character, and Elaine, I'm just going to call her Elaine. Julia Louis-Dreyfus was actually scheduled to appear in Black Widow, the movie.
Okay.
That was supposed to be like a small little cameo. She was going to be like, it was going to be like it was kept secret. Nobody was talking about it, but she was supposed to be revealed there in 2020. But they were, because of the pandemic and everything got pushed back, they were like, we'll just make the reveal in this show. So I thought that was interesting. So I only bring that up because I think it further proves or shows that Marvel's really I think they're gonna make a big deal out of this character. Like they're kind of like sowing the seeds now, but the fact that she's already in technically 2 different properties, I think is gonna show that like this is gonna be a big villain down the line.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
Cool. Any thoughts on the reveal? Anything?
I mean, again, I was expecting a cameo of some kind. I kind of thought it was going to be a character cameo, not an actor cameo, but
yeah.
As soon as like the shot, you just see her legs coming in. I was like, okay, this is clearly the cameo. Like you wouldn't shoot it that way.
Yeah.
Unless you were like about to reveal something.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was cool. Her performance actually really reminded me of, she was in a couple episodes of Arrested Development, and the way she was playing it really kind of reminded me of that, which is great because I love Arrested Development. So
yeah.
But yeah, it was a cool scene. I got the impression she was kind of like a lawyer or like a PR person or something like that. But
yeah,
I'm curious to see where they go with it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's like I agree. I like her, the actress, so that's why I was like, hey, cool. But it wasn't a big kind of like, ooh. It wasn't a big shock like seeing, let's say, Evan Peters initially on WandaVision.
Right.
But it was still cool. One last thing I'll say about it. This is a small thing, but it just made me laugh. I don't. she's talking to John Walker, and his wife is right next to him, and she's like, "Who are you? What are you doing?" And she just hands her this card, and then continues on the conversation. And as she leaves, they look at the card and they're like, "There's nothing on here." And I don't know why, but that just it just made me laugh. I'm sure it's like a secret agent card that it's like if you hold it under a light or you burn it, you'll see something. But I also I like to imagine that there is actually nothing on it, that she was just like, shut up, and just gave her a blank card.
That would be funny.
Yeah.
I found that moment quite perplexing, but
I got a chuckle. Yeah. From there, I think the next scene is I could be mixing it up, but the next scene we should talk about, I think, is we drop in Sokovia for a little bit, and we see kind of the last kind of interaction between Bucky and Zemo for the time being. What are your thoughts on that? The little kind of farewell as he's being like taken away by the Wakandans.
I really liked the scene. I was, they pulled that sort of, well, I wouldn't call it a bait and switch, but like Bucky pulls the gun on him, and in my head, I was like, don't do it, man. Like you've been through enough, like. And then, of course, he pulls the trigger, and he'd emptied the clip and whatever. I found that moment particularly very, very tense. I love that he turned him over to the Wakandans. Because he killed their king. That's where he belongs, I think. I liked the scene. Do you think we're going to see any more of him like in the finale, or do you think he's done for the series?
I think that was a season wrap for him. I don't think we're going to see him again. I could be wrong. I mean, I love Daniel Bruhl. It'd be cool if we did, if they kind of teased maybe what he's going to do next, because I don't think Marvel is done with the character. But yeah, do you think we're going to see him again before it's done in this season?
Okay. Oh, do I? No,
yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I doubt it. Yeah. It's weird too, because like they didn't really do all that much with him in this series. Like I liked him. I thought he was funny, particularly. That was my favorite thing about him. But like as like a pretty big villain, they didn't do that much with him. So I imagine.
Yeah, leading up to it, it seemed like the show was going to be like he was the big bad. It seemed like he was going to be, Zemo's back, and he really wasn't. He was in it for several episodes, and he kind of stole a lot of the scenes. But you're right, narratively, he didn't change that much of the course of the narrative. I thought the scene was good, but it was one of those things where I enjoyed it while it was happening, but as it was ending, the Wakandans were taking him away, I was sort of like, what was that? Was Bucky was just punking him, because
Right.
like he knew that he probably could see the Wakandans just kind of like walking up, you know, because there was just like nothing behind him. And
Right.
so he points a gun at him, click, JK, man, I'm not going to shoot you, and drops the bullets. Like, what was that for? Was it? It was just for the audience. Like,
That's a
why?
good point. I hadn't thought about that, but that's a very fair point.
So I thought that was a little silly, but you're right. It was a tense moment. I'm glad Bucky didn't do it, and yeah. So it's cool. I hope we do see him more in the future. But yeah,
Yeah, I expect he's probably done for this series, but
yeah,
I do think we'll see him again somewhere in phase 4 or phase
for
5 or
sure.
whatever.
Yeah. Going on from there, there's just a quick scene of like the flag smashers kind of meeting up. Not much to say there. I'm sure I'm just kind of going through the notes. They're just kind of like, oh, we're angry, and so nothing really new there. You know what I mean? Like, there's more said, obviously, but I think they're established. This was like the only scene that they really had, save for the very end. So not much there. But the real one of the biggest moments or the biggest scenes of this episode was when Sam went to go see Isaiah Bradley. And so he visits Isaiah Bradley. He brings the shield along with him just to kind of talk to him, because Sam's really kind of still wrestling with the weight of being Captain America. And I think that he originally is going to talk to Isaiah, maybe to give him trying to give him the shield back, or maybe just try to get his insight. And then it leads to one of the realest scenes in the entire season, and probably the entire MCU, where they drop, because we've talked about it in every episode leading up, how there's different shades of, like, sometimes they'll subtly reference kind of like identity politics within the United States, racial tension within the United States, race relations. Sometimes they'll make it a little more obvious, but this is really the time when they dropped all pretense, and they were like on the nose talking about, this is how, it's been like for either African Americans or Black Americans within the United States, how they've been treated all the way from 500 years ago during slavery to the 20th century, especially, which is less than 100 years ago. And it's bad. I mean, obviously that is putting it way too mildly, but it's a horrible legacy that in a complicated relationship that the United States has with people of color in particular. And I was surprised they went there. It was a pretty emotional, pretty heavy scene. Do you have any thoughts on this scene?
Well, first off, I thought both Anthony Mackie and Carl Lumley were amazing in the scene.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, Carl Lumley's first scene, and I think episode 2 is one of my favorite moments of the show. Like, he was so good in that.
Yeah.
Didn't disappoint here. The thing that I think for me, what, and like, this story he tells is just absolutely heartbreaking. But
Mhm.
the thing for me that really hit the point home is that he says, like, his buddies from his platoon or whatever, they were behind enemy lines, they had been captured, and he went in himself to break them out. And that's exactly what Steve does in the first Avenger, and he's hailed as a hero, and this guy gets jailed for 30 years. Like, I think
Mhm.
that puts a pretty fine point on what he was saying about how America treats African Americans, Black Americans. Like,
Mhm.
that was so well done, and it was so, like, just powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was a great scene. And it was essentially just two men talking, and from different generations, both of them Black, and just kind of what they were talking a lot about Captain America, and the shield, and in the mantle. But it's very clear that it's more just talking about the shield is just symbolic of just sort of what it means to be patriotic, and be an American in a country that is, as not wanted them for
Right.
for so long. And it's heartbreaking, and it touches on a lot of truths, especially of kind of how, like I said, African Americans were treated in the 20th century, how the government treated them, how people were, he said he was experimented on, which is things which actually absolutely did happen in the 20th century.
Yep.
And it's horrible. And he says something that's very kind of poignant towards the end, and um, he kind of throws it on Sam, where he essentially says that something along the lines that America will never have a Black Captain America, and no self-respecting Black man would ever want to be
Right.
Captain America. and that's heavy.
Yeah.
And
Well, and particularly for Sam, who's already struggling with this idea, you know, like, yeah, that was a crazy scene. It was very good.
yeah.
Do you think Isaiah will be back in the finale, or do you think that's a wrap on him?
No, I think we'll see him even if it's briefly, because I have some theories that we'll talk about at the end because we're like of what it was setting up. I have a feeling that we're probably going to cut back to him, maybe either watching the news or seeing something in the newspaper. But yeah, I have a feeling we're gonna get a little bit more of him. At least I
Yeah,
hope so. I hope this isn't the end, though, especially the way that like I said, he really threw it on Sam of just kind of like challenging him, of saying like, you know, you're not you're as though if he were to become Captain America, he'd be turning his back on his ancestors and all of his people. And that's heavy. That's a hell of a burden. That's hell of a something to wrap your head around. Um, and I'm glad that the show is tackling it. Do you think
yeah.
that we're going to see him one more time before?
I imagine there will be at least some, you know, assuming that Sam does take on the Captain America mantle, which I'm pretty sure he will.
Yeah.
I assume there will be at least some kind of reaction shot or something. Yeah, I would think
Mhm.
so.
Yeah. Just something about him seeing Sam as Captain America. Him being like, well, there is a black Captain America, and he may still disapprove of it. He may find it inspiring. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So going from there is essentially this is where the show kind of so this episode slows down a bit because there's some long sequences of Sam returns back home. He meets with his sister Sarah, and there's a lot of boat action, there's a lot of boat talk, a lot of fixing of boats. um Essentially, while Sam is still wrestling with the idea of becoming Captain America, he is this family boat that was introduced in the very first episode that was passed down from his parents. They're unable to sell it because it's a piece of junk, but they don't want to sell it either, and so they try to fix it up. And we get the first of two montages. Bucky comes up and he's kind of helping Sam, and they're buddies, and they're drinking beers, and there's a fun music. They're cleaning the boat, blah blah blah.
Well,
Whatever.
that's why I was sending you guys the Meters songs yesterday, because they had the meters in that one
Okay.
episode,
I
and
dig it.
loved it.
Yeah, it's so nothing bad. I on one hand, I appreciate that, like, this story, which I think, could have probably been condensed to a 2.5 hour Marvel movie. I'm glad that they decided to make it a show because now they're able to have more time to focus on these little character moments. In a movie, it would just be like, we're going here, there's an action scene. We're going here, there's an action scene. But for a show, they're able to slow down enough to be like, okay, it's just two guys, and they had differences, but now they're kind of working together. Um, I liked it. I can understand that it definitely slowed the episode down. The plot at least. But there was enough character moments in it that I was interested. Did you have any issues with the boat montage?
I actually really liked it.
Oh, cool.
For a show that, like, you can tell that these guys care about each other, but there's a lot of friction there. Like, this was a sequence where they were just being friends. Like, Bucky was there just to help out, drink a couple of beers, flirt with his sister, like, it warmed my heart. I said in my review, they should have called this episode Man Feelings, because there was a lot of that going on. But no, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, have you ever seen Scrubs?
Never really watched it. No.
Okay, never mind. There was just like a song in it called Guy Love, and it's just between like the two main guys, and they have like this epic bromance. And so I was thinking that where they just love each other, but it's Guy Love between two guys. Anyway, no, it's cool. I dug it too. I think I would have liked it more if there wasn't a second montage. I keep mentioning it, and so we'll get to that. But I appreciated it as well that it's slowed down just to have these two guys kind of connect a little bit more.
Yeah, just let it breathe a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and then from there, unless you have anything else to say about the montage.
Nope.
Okay. And from there we see Sam and Bucky just kind of like doing a bit of catch, but with the frisbee, with the shield, just kind of bouncing it off, kind of this homemade course off of trees and stuff. Few things about this. One, the very first thing that I thought is like, if you don't have soldier serum, holy shit, what are you doing with the shield? Because they this the way it was shot did a really good job of like he would bounce it and then it would come back and it was coming right at you and it was coming really fast. And I just imagine being in Sam's shoes and like trying to catch that. I don't know how you could just stand there and just be like, like,
Right.
do you know what I'm talking about? That shit was coming fast.
Yeah.
But cool conversation with Sam and Bucky. This was like you know, after working on the boat and stuff together, it wasn't a montage anymore, but it was them just kind of, you know, laying down some hard truths. I really enjoyed the conversation that they had. It was multifaceted. It was kind of like Sam was saying something inspirational for Bucky. Bucky was saying something inspirational for Sam. It was just kind of them just kind of leaning on each other in a really good way. Again, this is something I don't think we really would have got a lot of if this was a movie. So I'm really glad we got to see this in the show.
I think that might have been my favorite scene in the episode. Just the conversation was like you said, they're both really giving each other perspective. And you know, I think Bucky says to Sam, like, it doesn't matter what Steve would do. Steve isn't here now. Like he's trying to, and I think Bucky apologizes to Sam for having questioned him for giving the shield away. And then Sam is using his, because he used to help out army vets or whatever. He's using his sort of skills to help Bucky figure out how to get right with his own history. And, you know, he says something like, you weren't amending, you were avenging. You have to go and learn how to help these people that you've wronged. And this clearly next episode, he's going to go see the old Asian gentleman whose son he killed. That's going to be brutal. But yeah, I really liked the scene. It was interesting to me because there were moments of that scene in the trailer and it was such a different context, because in the trailer it looked like kind of a fun action training sequence, which it was a training sequence, but it was really more of a dialogue character scene, and a pretty heavy one at that. And I really liked it.
Yeah, same here. There's one line that was in some of the earlier trailers where he says to Bucky, like, the shield has, so he says something along the lines of like, the shield has a complicated history. And in, you know, watching the trailers, literally all I thought was like, oh, it's because of Steve Rogers and the Nazis and this and that. No, like it means so much more than that. And the show continued. It wasn't just one scene with Isaiah Bradley. Bucky also brought it up. He was like, and it's something that I resonated with, where he was like, look, when Steve gave you this, I don't think either him or I really understood the nature, the heaviness that comes with asking a black man to be Captain America. And he says that outright. And I was like,
I think he even says like, how could we have, you know?
Yeah. And I thought that was great, because I felt I really related to that, because at the beginning of the season, I was like, I think that maybe Sam not wanting to take up the mantle is more just, I originally thought it was kind of contrived. Like, okay, we need to have like some conflict of why he's not just Captain America right away. But I think that was, you know, probably because, you know, I'm a white dude, and I was just like, well, why not be Captain America? And I was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of baggage that comes with that. So I appreciated that. And like I said, I liked that both of them were kind of helping each other out. Like each had different words of wisdom that they needed to say. Two quick little things that I quite liked. One was, it was hearkening back to the first episode where, you know, Bucky was in this, in the therapy session, and he was just so reluctant, like adamantly was like, not having nightmares, blah, 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 just not opening up to this therapist. There was no trust, no dialogue between them. And then within an instant, as soon as Sam asks him, like, are you still having the nightmares? He's just like, yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
And I really like that, because they didn't like focus on it. But to me, it was like, man, this went from like, they were frenemies, you know, at the beginning, to like, he's the first person that he's probably opened up to about that. And I really liked that. I really liked it. And I still liked that they were able, as they were walking away from the scene, they were still able to kind of maintain that kind of like, we're okay. They don't want to admit that they're good buddies now, because they're walking away and they're like, so what are we? We coworkers now? We're not coworkers. a couple of guys who has who has a mutual friend, but we don't have a mutual friend anymore. So we're just a couple of guys. And I
Mhm.
like that. I feel like that's the perfect tagline, Falcon Winter Soldier, just a
Couple of
couple of
guys.
guys.
Yeah.
So I dug that. Um, did you notice any of that, or do you feel that as well?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah. And then from oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, where do we go next?
I think that's the other montage, the
Okay.
actual training montage. This one I didn't like. I think that's why I've said montage about 50 times during this review, because I think that one is enough, I think, per episode. And this one was clearly, I just wanted to put, like, the Eye of the Tiger, Rocky 3 training montage. It was corny to me. I
It was
get it.
it was very 80s, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't hate it. I wasn't like, how dare they? It's like, okay, how do you show a character training over a period of time? You just have a montage. But we've all seen training montages, so it was fine. Didn't dislike it, but I was like, this is a bit cheesy.
I had
Did it bother?
the I had the song Montage from Team America in my head the
Yes.
entire scene, and I was
Gonna need
laughing.
a montage.
I don't
Yeah.
think that was the point, but yeah.
No. But good on him. He was doing flips and shit. He was he was running, catching the shield like a boss. Like, good on him for not having the super soldier serum and still catching that freaking death trap. But yeah, this leads into something that we actually didn't talk about when because it was first introduced when they were doing the boat stuff. But Bucky was like, "Hey, I got a big old mystery box from
Right.
Wakanda. It's for you." So Bucky turned in a favor from Wakanda, which doesn't make sense because it seems like I feel like he owes them.
Right?
I don't know what they.
They gave him an arm and solved his mind problems, and
Yeah, and he's like, "All right, give me this as well. We'll call it even." Okay, like,
right.
what did you do for him? Um, but they gave him something, and it's a big old box. And the entire time I was watching it, I was like, "Don't just show us what's in it. Like, literally, just show us what's in it, and that'll be it. Even if it's the final shot, I just want to see what's in the box, so I don't have to wait a week." And they didn't. They they didn't show what's in the box. Do you have any theories what's in it? I know what mine is.
I mean, it's either a new Falcon suit or it's a Captain America suit,
I was
or
gonna say
it's kind of a mixture of both, maybe.
I was gonna say it's Gwyneth Paltrow's head. That's what I'm putting my
Ah,
money my money on. What's in the box?
it's in the box.
Yeah. But yeah, so okay, it's got to be a Captain America suit, though, right?
I would imagine
Right.
so.
I can't see him going back to the Falcon mantle. I mean, he lost the wings, like, pretty metaphorically, pretty literally. He didn't want him anymore. All of this has been talking about him with Isaiah Bradley about becoming Captain America, not just a dude with a shield, but becoming Captain America. So I can't imagine him being anything else. Like, I don't know. What else would it be?
Well, I mean, maybe it's still got some kind of flying powers. I don't want to see. I don't want to see Sam Wilson just stuck to the ground from now on. You know, like
Uh,
he looks so good in the sky, but
is he so he's a flying Captain America?
something, yeah, kind of like a Rocketeer kind of thing. I don't know.
Like a bald eagle? That'd
There
be
it
pretty
is.
cool. There it is.
Yeah, you're just making fun of him for being bald. It's not very nice.
No, it's a buzz cut. It's a decision. It's not.
True. It's
He's
true.
not bald. Mhm.
The only thing that would be a little bit weird to me is like if the new Captain America's suit was manufactured in a country that's not America. That's a little weird. You know, like it's like the symbol of America, but it was made in like Wakanda.
Well, I mean, the original Captain America suit was made in China, so it said it right on the back.
I see.
Yeah, no,
I see.
It
No,
was a dumb
I
joke.
buy that.
No. But no, I see what you're saying. It is sort of like, okay, but so maybe, yeah, it's, I don't know. The only thing I would think of, I mean, like, it is kind of weird that wouldn't be made in America, but it probably would also, like, be lined with vibranium, since I think
Yeah,
they're not going to
probably.
go in the route of Sam being a super soldier. So I think that they got to give him a bit of an edge in having kind of like a bulletproof suit. I think would be, you know what I mean? It's as opposed to just being like, well, this is latex and rubber. It's like, okay, we made it in Wakanda, so you're invincible, kind of.
Right.
I hope it looks cool. Nothing. There would be nothing worse than just the next episode after all this build up, and he just looks like a total dork.
Yeah.
But Marvel's been kind of killing it with their costumes lately. Like
Absolutely.
the Wanda reveal at the end of
It's great.
WandaVision, that was awesome. So
And
I'm hoping. Yeah.
I'm on record saying I love, aside from like the helmet fitting a little weird. I love the John Walker Captain America suit. It's really cool.
Yeah. Also, what's he gonna look like now? Is he gonna because at the end this was sort of like well, I'll get to it in a second, because like the show, this episode ends essentially two things. One, we see, you know, Sam looking in the box. We don't see what's in the box, but we also see that the Flag Smashers are in New York City. Dun dun dun. So it's setting up a big showdown with the Flag Smashers in New York City. They have Batroc the Leaper, that's from Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and also from the first episode. So he's back and he's as French as ever. So good on him. Sure. I mean, like you said, I'm not really super into the Flag Smashers. I'm much more interested in the conflict between John Walker and everybody else.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, it'll lead to a big fireworky finale. So there's that. But what
I will say this quickly. Even though I really don't care about the Flag Smashers, like I just don't care. And I don't know if she's not a good actress or if it's just the way the character was written, but like Carly as a villain, like I'm just not buying it. I'm not scared of her. I understand their reasons for doing why they're doing, but I just don't care. Having said that, the one moment where they're in the park and she whistles and then just droves of people start coming out and the camera pans up to show the New York skyline, I found that kind of genuinely chilling.
Yeah.
But aside from that,
yeah, it felt kind of culty, and cults are creepy. Yeah. So yeah, I didn't like that. Yeah, I wouldn't say I don't know, but I don't think she's a bad actress. I think it's just kind of like I don't maybe miscast. But I think that they wanted to have, so I don't know. You're right. I'm not feeling the threat from her. She's coming across a little bit more petulant than sort of, but whatever. I said last week that I thought that their ideology was interesting. So maybe that will play into the finale as well.
My buddy was telling me her character is apparently in the comics. In the comics, she's a guy. And I was like, is his name Carl? And he was like, yep. And I was like, of course it is. Of course it is.
That works.
Just slap an eye on it.
Yeah. Yeah, but the post-credit scene or the mid-credit scene was John, and he was working on his own Captain America shield, which looked like it was made out of scrap metal. So like,
yeah, it really did.
What do you plan on doing with that? The other one's made of vibranium, my man. I don't know what you're he's gonna throw it once and it just gets dented. But he's making his own thing. Do you think that he's gonna keep the same suit, just like paint it a different color? Like he's got to look a little bit different, right?
I would imagine so. I kind of don't think the military would let him keep the suit.
Yeah.
Presumably it's their property.
He makes his own suit. He's like the kick-ass suit from like the beginning of, he's just like a dork in like green leather. Yeah, so there's gonna be a big old punch out. We'll be fine. I'm looking forward to the finale. Are you, like, because I know that we've been enjoying this season, but besides last episode, we haven't really been like holy crap, we can't wait for the next episode. How are you feeling leading into the finale?
I'm looking forward to it very much. Again, I'm okay to wait a week. Like I'm not, I need it right now. But I'm looking forward to it very much. I think it's going to be a pretty good finale. I really want to see, that suit reveal. I want to see the whole John Walker thing. Yeah, I'm into it. And I want to see Bucky tell the old man about his son.
Yeah, right there with you. The only thing that I was kind of like, I wish I didn't have to wait a week, is I just want to see what the suit looks like. Yeah. I just wanted to see what's in the box. That was the only thing. But wait another week. It's fine.
Okay. So that is that. We are going to move on to we're going to go spoilers. We're not going to go as deep as we did on Falcon and Winter Soldier, but we are going to talk about some specific things. So again, if you want to watch a spoiler-free review of Nobody, that's on my channel right now. If you want to just skip this to the rest of the podcast, I will put I'll put the time code up. Where do you want to skip to on the screen now? So Nobody is a new movie starring Bob Odenkirk, Christopher Lloyd. I forget the Russian guy's name. It's Alexei something. And who else?
Connie Nielsen's in it. RZA. Is in it. Oh man, I don't know how to pronounce this. I apologize, but it's Alexei Serebryakov. I don't know. I
Something like
apologize.
that.
Sir, I
It's-
apologize. You were very good. I'm just an ignorant American.
so this excuse me, this movie is a lot like the John Wick movies, in a lot of very specific ways, and it's different, but basically Bob Odenkirk plays a guy named Hutch. He's a sort of mild-mannered family man who's got a boring job,
Mhm.
um, and then one night people break into his house, and he actually gets the drop on them, but he lets them go. And then, of course, everyone's just sort of emasculating him for not standing up and being the man. And then eventually he's talking to his buddy Riza, who we don't actually see until the end of the movie, but he reveals that he's like, there was compassion there. He was saying, like, these were two young people. They were clearly desperate. And then there's a moment where he says, when she had the gun on me, I could literally see that it was unloaded.
Mhm.
And that's when it's kind of revealed that, much like John Wick, we never find out exactly what he used to do, but
Mhm.
much like John Wick, he was a man with a certain set of skills.
Mhm.
And there's a sequence on a bus where these like Russian thugs are terrorizing this girl, and he kind of, I mean, he beats the tar out of them. They beat him up pretty bad too,
Mhm.
but then I guess that sets up that one of these guys who's now in critical condition was the younger brother of this major Russian mob boss, and the mob's coming after him, and it gets all John Wicky. And so that's your basic premise. Chris, overall thoughts on the movie?
Yeah, I quite enjoyed this. I think it's a lot of fun. It is very much like John Wick. Much more like the first one than the other two. Where I stand with the John Wick series, so this is kind of how I was feeling going into it, is that I like the first John Wick. I am one of the very few people that is not really a fan of the other two. I think that they're cool. They have some great fight sequences, but holy fuck are they long. They're too goddamn long for me. I apologize, that's the one F-bomb I'm gonna drop. Where I have both the John Wick movies, I was just like, they're over 2 hours. And at some point, especially during like the last 20-minute long fight scenes that both movies have, I'm just like, okay, like I get it. And John's not that interesting of a character. You don't really care about him besides the first one. So this movie kind of takes what was really good about the first John Wick. It's like 90 minutes ish, and
And it
has
flies.
yeah, absolutely. It flies by, and it has a much more likable lead.
Mhm.
And not There's nothing against Keanu Reeves. It's just John Wick's a bit boring. But
And he doesn't talk a lot, and
yeah, he's just stoic action man. Well, Hutch is such a relatable and likable character, and he gets shit on so much in the beginning. Um, so you really do root for him. So yeah, I quite like this. It's really fun. I think it covers a lot of familiar territory. So it didn't really kind of go that extra mile for me, because a lot of it I was like, I have seen this before. That being said, it's very entertaining. It's very stylishly made. That's something that I really liked, is that it has a great sense of fun and humor throughout it. It's not necessarily a comedy, but there's humor through it. And the direction, and I'm gonna ruin this guy's name, I apologize, but it's Isla Nicehuller. I don't know. I apologize.
I think it's Ilya Naishuler, something like that.
Nicehuller. Okay, he was the director of Hardcore Henry, which is also, a pretty, that was, for anyone who hasn't seen that, pretty stylishly directed action film. And his style goes, double here. It's That's something that I like, where even when it wasn't the action scenes, it was just, the day to day, just kind of seeing the life that Hutch had, and was just kind of comical, and it was like quick cuts, and there was a lot of care put into how this is crafted. So it wasn't just like, here's an action movie just going through the beats. This one definitely had a bit of an edge and a bit of a style to it that I enjoyed. So overall, but without going into further details, because I'm sure we'll talk about it, I would recommend this. I think this is a really fun time if you are looking for John Wick style action. This has got you covered. If you're looking for kind of a death wishy kind of like, revenge flick, that you got this as well. And Bob Odenkirk is terrific in the lead, so I recommend this movie.
And I had to wear this today. This is my Like the
Oh,
Better Call
that's
Huts
perfect.
shirt.
Love it.
But yeah, I loved this movie. I had
Mhm.
such a blast with it. There were the entire final act, which gets kind of Home Alone-y.
Oh,
Um,
totally. Sorry.
I was like,
Mhm.
the violence was so intense, but in a way that was so weirdly fun that I was just like
Mhm.
giggling. I said in my review, there were moments in this movie where I was just going like, oh, like it really like I was so in. I love Bob Odenkirk. I have loved Bob Odenkirk since HBO's Mr. Show. Been a
Mhm.
fan of that guy for forever, and it's so cool to see how he went from sketch comedian to like comedic actor, and then with like
Mhm.
Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, like legit actor. Now he's a legit action star because
Mhm.
the action in this movie is great, and he crushes it. And apparently, he trained for like 2 years for this movie,
Mhm.
and it shows.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's
he looks
actually
great.
yeah, and
Mhm.
it's interesting too. Like, well, we were saying, in a lot of ways, it's a lot like John Wick, and yeah, it's not a comedy, but it's one of the ways it's different from John Wick is its tone. It's not a comedy, but it is very kind of playful and
Yeah.
it's fun, and it is funny, not jokey funny, but just
Mhm.
moments or situations that just kind of, I don't know, tickled me.
Mhm.
That fight scene on the bus was amazing. Like,
Mhm.
I absolutely love this movie. I thought it was great. I loved the soundtrack. It was so
Oh yeah.
like, on paper, the soundtrack should not have worked because like you have this crazy frenetic action scene and Frank Sinatra's playing,
Mhm.
and somehow it worked.
Yeah.
And I know I'm kind of bouncing all over the place because I love this movie, and I'm psyched to talk about it. But I loved the way this movie was shot. We were talking about Falcon and Winter Soldier, and everything was shaky and whatever. This movie didn't do that.
Hell
This
no.
movie, like I was saying about Falcon and Winter Soldier, if you're gonna take the time to choreograph crazy fight like this, show it to us. And they
Mhm.
do. Just wide shots, the camera's just still, it's
Mhm.
not quick cutting,
Mhm.
and it looked so good.
Yeah, the action in this movie is terrific. I it's like you said, it's the exact opposite of what we're talking about, where the choreography is terrific. It's shot in these beautiful wides. It there's still quick editing, but it's not it's not this rapid fire machine gun editing. They linger and really let you see what he's doing. And it's really creative. It's not just like he'll punch someone and they go down. The things that it's kind of Jackie Chan-y in a way. I don't know if that sounded offensive. What I mean that it's like Jackie Chan-esque in the sense that he uses objects. Like someone has a bottle, he'll use the bottle, he'll use this. Like you mentioned, it gets like Home Alone towards the end, which I thought, which I said right away as it was happening, but I loved it. Just kind of
Mhm.
he's in this warehouse, these death contraptions. It's like if what's his name, Kevin McAllister grew up, this is what he would be doing, where it
Right.
wouldn't just be like, oh, I'm gonna make you trip on some toys, I'm gonna murder you, I'm gonna like shoot and impale you with these like metal rods.
Oh, that
um
moment, like that
Terrific.
was an
Uh-huh.
oh,
Yeah.
that was
There
one of
was,
those
yeah,
for me.
I really truly like the direction in this. Like it was much more thought out, and it was much more like, it wasn't just him wanting to tell just like, here's an action movie. Like you said, there is fun to it. It's not silly, it's not goofy, there's no gags, but there's fun to it. Little things of kind of like, one example is, Bob Odenkirk's character was recalling a story about him having mercy on this guy, and just little things that they would do, like they would do this pan. They're like, oh, it's having this gun. Oh wait, no, it's actually this gun. And then I saw him with his family, and it's like, I dig it. I really enjoyed the creativity behind it.
Yeah.
I also enjoyed that, the character of Hutch, he's not this invincible Superman. And in fact, especially in the bus fight scene, he gets his ass kicked. Like
Yeah.
he wins the day. It's more like but I appreciate that he's not like John Wick, where he's like the super soldier
Yeah.
that just can go through an entire room and can be unscathed. Like he seems like a legit guy that knows his stuff, and he'll keep getting up. But at the end, but he can still get hurt, and people can still get the drop on him.
And I think it almost felt to me like it played out like part of it was just him having to kind of get back in the swing of things.
Mhm.
Like that was his first fight in a long time, so he was rusty, and
Mhm. Oh, for sure. Yeah. It was like this. You're right. This is him kind of like the first time doing it in years. And he got maybe a little too overconfident. And it took him a bit to kind of get back into it.
It's just like,
Mm.
I'm gonna fuck you up. And I was like,
I
are
loved
you?
it.
And I mean, he
Yeah.
does, but
Yeah. It took
and
him a minute.
I loved that moment too when he rips the bar off and he nails the one dude in the throat, and clearly he's
Uh-huh.
like collapsed his trachea or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And then he finds the pop cup and pulls out the straw and like cuts the guy's throat open, puts the straw in
Yeah.
so he can breathe.
Gives him
I was
a
like,
tracheotomy.
yeah,
Holy
I was like,
shit.
that was so fucking gnarly.
Yeah, man. No, this is a very cool movie. It's a cool movie. Before I even finished it, I messaged you, but I also messaged my dad. I was like, dude, I got a movie for you. This definitely not in a bad way, but this is like it's a good dad flick in a way. Like this is something I'm like, dude, it's just like I messaged him like I feel like you're gonna love it. It how do I say it? It's like John Wick, just but with more character. There's more character to it, and that's why I said it reminded me of the original Death Wish a little bit, even though it doesn't go to the dark depths of that original. But it does. It felt very modern while also narratively feeling more like kind of an 80s and 90s movie where they still at least attempted to have like a character with an arc and with motivation and stuff. Um, and I think that's what really elevated it. Like if you just got another like stoic action dude to do this role, it would not nearly have been as fun. So a major props to Bob Odenkirk on this. You know, I've always loved him in everything that I've seen him in, and I'm glad that at nearly 60 years old, the dude's an action star now. So
Mhm.
good on that. Um, for this movie, it's there's not really like major complaints that I have. It's just sort of elements of it just felt a little too familiar, so that's why I wasn't pushed over into like loving it, because it was just kind of like I have seen it, and especially being like seeing three John Wick movies in the past few years, this felt so similar to that in style, especially with the fighting, that it didn't really have the same kind of impact as like I don't know. It just felt like, yeah, this is really good for what it's set out to achieve, but what it's setting out to achieve is not rewriting the book. It's not reinventing the wheel, which it doesn't need to, but there was an element of familiarity for me, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was, yeah, I mean, we've seen this movie before.
Hmm.
Um, I thought the plot was pretty thin. I thought the
Hmm.
dialogue was not great. I
Hmm.
thought the villain was like really over the top. Although his introduction when he was up on stage singing and dancing, that had me laughing my head off. But
Hmm. Terrific. Oh, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but terrific like Goodfellas shot. Did you notice that? Where it started with him in the car on the street, and then it was a single take of him walking all the way into the
oh, is that
club, and yeah, it was all oneer, and I was like, so this is a little film nerd stuff. So I know I feel like it was intentional because it was a oneer that looked it's very identical to the Goodfellas shot where
oh, okay?
Ray Liotta's going into the restaurant. He goes through like the back in the kitchen. He's saying hey to everybody. But also, like right before that scene, we see Bob Odenkirk's kind of like man cave. He has sort of like a thing. And there's a poster for a movie Touch of Evil, which has a very famous opening long take shot. So I thought that was a little cute touch.
That's cool.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, for me, like I had problems with the movie, but it thoroughly delivered on what it promised.
Uh-huh.
It had badass action, very creative action at that.
Hmm. Hmm.
It gave me everything I wanted it to. I didn't need. I mean, good dialogue's always a plus, but I
Hmm.
didn't need it. Um, I had an absolute blast with this movie. So
Yeah.
I guess we should move on. But you would recommend this film?
Yeah, I honestly, this is a lot of fun, guys. I guess like both Court and I said, this is not the you've seen movies like this before, but when it's done this well, it deserves to be looked at it and appreciated. And at 90 minutes, I guarantee you that you're gonna have a good time with this.
I would fully agree with that myself.
Mhm.
So we're running out of time, so we're gonna have to
Yeah.
speed through the last couple of topics. But
Mhm.
so we do want to talk about Amazon's upcoming Lord of the Rings series just got its budget, $465 million for the first season. For context, I believe Peter Jackson's trilogy cost about $281 million for all three.
Mhm.
Now, we do not know how many episodes this first season is going to be. Like, if it's a 24-hour long season episode season, okay, I get it. But what if it's 8 episodes at $465 million? One thing I'm unclear on. I remember when they first announced this series, it was something like, just to get the rights to the story was something like $200 million. So I don't know if that's factoring in to this number or not. I'm unclear. But even if it is, you're still talking $265 million for one season of television.
Yeah.
What are your sort of overall thoughts on this?
It's in a weird way, it's both surprising and not. It's like surprising initially, but it also sort of makes sense because this is undoubtedly the most expensive television production ever, ever.
For sure.
And it's even not even just for TV, but for film production like standards, like or like budgets. This is astronomical. And you're right. It's like it really is sort of like, how many episodes is this going to be? Is it going to be 8 episodes? Is it going to be 10 episodes? More than that? I think that we're going to have to wait to see if it really does pay off. But I think that on one hand, the reason why I said that it sort of makes sense is that the Lord of the Rings trilogy, especially, is one of the most beloved trilogies in film history. It is. We grew up with it. You and I are massive fans of it. The last, Return of the King, got swept the Oscars, won 11 Oscars. They made all the money. It's the benchmark for fantasy films. So when you're going to do a TV show, I feel and understand the pressure of like, not only do you have the legacy of the films, but you have the legacy of the novels, going back to as far as 1937. The entire franchise is so beloved that you don't want to mess it up. And you don't want it to look cheap. And you don't want it from people to go from the Lord of the Rings movies to seeing a cheaper, watered down version on television. So on that end, I understand wanting to go with a massive budget and making sure that it probably has cinema, film, theatrical level CGI costume sets. But even then, I mean, 469 million, that is such a crazy number. It's like, I don't know,
one season.
Yeah, if I forget what the numbers are for both like Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, but they were close to that. But those movies had all of the movie stars in the goddamn world. So, that alone would cost a lot of money. But like, I don't know, man. I think this is one of those things where we're going to have to wait and see. Like, I think it's hard to justify that it would ever be fully worth that much. But regardless, I think that we're going to have to wait to see if such a large budget would be worth it. Like, if it really does deliver something that even makes The Mandalorian and like WandaVision look like those are TV shows, this is a movie. You know what I mean? Like, just the craziest level of special effects that we have never seen on TV before. Maybe it'll be worth it. Do you think this is like a ridiculous thing? Do you think that it would be worth it?
Both. I think this is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, again, if anyone's going to do it, Amazon has all of the money in the world. So if you're going to do it, yeah, throw the money at it, make it as good as you possibly can. It still boggles my mind that it's going to cost that much. And I know I keep repeating this, for one season. Like,
does that, I wonder if this number even includes the proposed idea for marketing. Is this just the production budget and not even including marketing?
I think, what? I still have the Variety article here. Let me see if it says.
Because then if not, then it's pushing 600 million at that point. Even if this series is a hit, will it be financially viable for them?
It's crazy. So what this says is Amazon's upcoming Lord of the Rings TV series will cost approximately $465 million to produce one season. It uses the word produce. So
yeah, that may not include marketing. That is crazy. this is what is what is that the dodgeball quote? It's like, it's a bold move. Let's see if it works out for him.
I
Um,
don't remember.
but yeah, it's, I don't know, man. It's like, I get you want to make it as good as possible, but it's like, is it? I couldn't. What number of new subscribers would you have to draw in order for this to like be financially successful?
Right.
I don't even know.
And maybe like we were talking about Netflix with Knives Out, maybe it's just like a maybe it's just a flex in the streaming wars, you know?
It's a power move. They're just like, unzip, look at this.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm looking forward to the show though. Been a lifelong Tolkien fan. So I was already on board. I man, if the bigger they are, the harder they fall. So don't mess this up.
Let me ask you this. I
Mhm.
think it's fair to assume, I think everyone's calling it Amazon's Lord of the Rings because we don't know what else to call it.
Mhm.
I would imagine it's not going to be called the Lord of the Rings because that's a very specific story, and they've made it clear that's not the story they're telling. This is not the story of Sauron.
Uh-huh.
I believe so. Lord of the Rings, as I recall, takes place in the third age of Middle Earth. I
Mhm.
believe this series is going to take place in the second age. I think a lot of it's going to be based on the Silmarillion and maybe some of the appendices from Lord of the Rings. So I imagine it will not be called Lord of the Rings. I'm going to throw out a guess. It's a pretty lame guess. I could see them calling it Middle Earth. What do you think?
I could see that. I could see that. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, just especially because they're putting this much money into it, that they just call it the Lord of the Rings, just to have that name recognition.
Right.
Uh, but you're right. You don't want to confuse people. I could see it being called Middle Earth because you want to have something that's recognizable. For The Hobbit, they call it The Hobbit. Like, okay, yeah, it's not the Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit. It's like, we know what a Hobbit is, so they need to have something. That's a good guess, actually. I don't know if you just pulled that out right of your ass right now,
I
but
did.
okay, no, I it's something like that. I feel like they're gonna go for it because, yeah, I feel like you. I don't know. I Do you think that it's impossible? Are you saying that, like, if you were to bet, that they would not call it the Lord of the Rings, or do you think that they might just be like, screw it, we spent this much money on the franchise, we're calling it this?
I'll say this. If they call
Uh,
it the Lord of the Rings, that's going to piss me off.
okay,
I'm not gonna like that. I would
yeah.
rather you call it the Silmarillion. I would rather
Mhm.
you call it the Lord of the Rings appendices than Lord
Mhm.
of the Rings, you know?
Yeah, call it that. That you just have the words Lord of the Rings in it, but like, like you said, appendices or
Yeah.
before Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Like, just I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know, man. I don't know.
I it wouldn't shock me if they did it, particularly like you said, after investing this kind of money.
Mhm.
I hope they don't. I hope they come up with something different.
If it's like a Lord of the Rings story, like a Star
Right.
Wars
Right.
story, like fuck.
That would be
Anyway,
amazing.
yeah.
All right, so and apparently it's in production right now. They're shooting in New Zealand, so let's go. Give it to me. I
Hey,
want to see
oh,
it.
what? Sorry, last thing. Did they say already if is this going to be like technically connected to Peter Jackson's films, or is it just like, uh,
I'm not sure. I don't think I've read that, but that doesn't
hmm,
mean it necessarily won't be.
yeah,
I don't imagine. I'm trying to remember if I've read anything about like actors coming back. Like, could you have Kate Blanchett as like
Galadriel, yeah,
Galadriel or something?
hmm,
That
hmm,
I would be into that. I love her in those movies.
oh yeah, and it would make sense like narratively. She's like several thousand years old.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, I was just curious, especially because you said they're shooting in New Zealand, and I'm like, I know that New Zealand is synonymous with Middle Earth at this point, but like, you don't have to shoot it there, so it seems kind of like maybe, or at least they're just aping the same aesthetics. Anyway, it's
Um,
curious.
I'm just quickly going through this article. It doesn't seem to say anything about there being a connection. It doesn't seem to say anything about there not being a connection either.
Mhm.
And as far as the cast, uh, nobody from the movies as of yet. So
Well, only time will tell.
yeah. So finally, we're going to move on because we're just a little bit. Well, we're not quite over time yet, but
Mhm.
um, Oscars are coming up. They're a week tonight, and so we wanted to just quickly talk about some picks that we have who we think maybe is going to win. And first off, like I said off the top, this is a weird Oscars because 2020 was a weird year for film. Not a lot of movies came out theatrically. A lot of things
Mhm.
got pushed. There was a lot of streaming, and because of that, the Academy actually changed their rules about streaming movies. So there are a number of movies that are up for Oscars that were strictly streaming. Normally, to qualify for an Academy Award, your movie, I believe, has to play in at least one theater in New York and one theater in LA for like a week. So purely streaming movies generally don't qualify. They relaxed the rules this year because the telecast would have been 14 minutes long if they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
We have talked about how 2020 is kind of an asterisk year, and even if a movie wins an Oscar, is it that huge of a deal because so little came out? What are your sort of thoughts on that before we get to our picks?
I'm actually kind of the opposite opinion because especially with what was nominated and even the movies that haven't been nominated, there were still a ton of things that came out in 2020, whether it's streaming or otherwise, that are terrific. Like some really, really great movies came out in 2020. So certain people that say, I'm not going to call out any other YouTubers, but other kind of YouTube pundits that I've seen, like, this is an asterisk year. Who cares about this year? And it's like, you know what? There have been movies that have been pushed back, but let's take a look at the movies that have been pushed back. No time, like, no, James Bond. There's been some Fast and the Furious. It's big Hollywood studio productions that have been pushed back mostly. There was a couple movies that might have been nominated, that might have been, like, Steven Spielberg had West Side Story coming out. In the Heights might have gotten some Oscar nominations. There was a Wes Anderson movie, but primarily the movies that got delayed were not ones that were going to win Oscars anyway. So right. I think that honestly, it seems like 90% of the movies that are nominated were the ones that were going to be nominated regardless. So that's one reason why I'm like, no, I'd say, yeah, keep it up. You don't want to have like a weird backlog. Honor these movies. They did come out. People did see them. They deserve respect.
I'm very much of the same mind. I mean, if you look at the kind of movies that are getting most of the nominations, they're Oscar kind of movies. They're prestige kind of movies that they would have been nominated in a year that had 50% more movies anyway. Like, something like Nomadland was always going to get an Oscar nomination. It's that kind of movie.
Yeah, Fast and the Furious 9 was not going to win any Oscars. Right. Like I know everybody loves Marvel, but Black Widow wasn't going to win. It's fine. I don't think there needs to be an asterisk for it. I think that honestly, if the pandemic didn't hit, I think that the majority of the movies that are nominated now would still be nominated.
Right. I would agree with that. So let me bring up the nominations here. We'll just do this quick and then we'll call it a day.
Cool.
So I guess let's, just to make it easy, I had an order, but let's just like go with the order that's on my phone.
Yeah, that's cool with me, man.
From the official.
So
Oscar
do you want to,
website.
Real quick, we'll go through the nominations. Do we want to do a quick who we think will win and who do we think should win? Did you put any thought into it, or do you just want to do like who do you think will win?
I think I'm probably just going to say who I think will win based on, because some of these things I haven't seen. I haven't seen everything. So
gotcha. Okay.
I can make educated guesses on who I think will win, but if I haven't seen something, I don't want to say who I think should win.
For sure.
If you want to do both, feel free. But
cool.
So the first category we have here is Best Actor in a Leading Role. The nominees are Riz Ahmed for The Sound of Metal, Chadwick Boseman for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Anthony Hopkins for The Father, Gary Oldman for Mank, and Steven Yeun for Minari. So Chris, do you want to go first?
Absolutely. Right off the bat, all of them are terrific. This is a stacked category. Every actor on it is like some of the career best. I know that a lot of people are pushing for Anthony Hopkins because he's terrific in The Father, but
he's amazing.
But I think that it's a lock. I think that Chadwick Boseman is going to take the Oscar home this year. I think it's deserving as well. And I don't want to say this like flippantly, but I do think that partially because this is his last or one of his last roles, he's not going to get another opportunity. And Anthony Hopkins has already won. So I say, Chadwick Boseman deserves it. And I think that it's a hell of a performance in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Yeah, that's who my vote is. Because he's won. I think he won a good indicator of a lot, especially for acting categories, if people are interested in like making predictions, is look at the SAG Awards. If you look at the SAG Awards history with the past like decade or so, typically, not 100%, but most of the time, whoever wins the SAG Award wins at the Oscars.
Right.
So he won at the SAG Award. So I honestly, I'd bet money on it that he's going to take it home this year.
I absolutely agree, and
Mhm.
I do think. How do I want to phrase this? I don't want to be cynical
Yeah.
and say he's just going to win it because he died. I do think that's going to play into it. Absolutely, I do.
Mhm.
But given the performance he gives in that movie, he absolutely deserves it. And if it were me, if I were an Oscar voter and it were between his performance and Anthony Hopkins in The Father, which again was brilliant, I would struggle to decide which to pick. And the fact that it was his final performance would probably be the deciding factor for me.
Mhm.
But having said that, I don't want to take anything away from his performance because it is absolutely unreal. There is a moment where he goes, and no spoilers here, but there is a moment where he goes on a monologue telling a story about his family, his father, and I'm pretty sure it's all in one take, and it's like a good 3-4 minutes long, and he goes through
Mhm.
this like journey, and it was absolutely unreal.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. Killed it.
So the next, again, we're just going in the order of the article here on the Oscars website. The next one is actor in a supporting role. Nominees are Sacha Baron Cohen for The Trial of Chicago 7, Daniel Kaluuya for Judas and the Black Messiah, Leslie Odom Jr. for One Night in Miami, Paul Raci for Sound of Metal, and Lakeith Stanfield in Judas and the Black Messiah. I have not seen any of these movies,
Are you
so
serious?
I am.
Oh man. Okay.
I've
Okay. No worries. I thought you saw Trial of the Chicago 7. I thought we talked about it.
I started it. I
Uh-huh.
got about 20 minutes into it, and I think I was kind of sitting there going, I can tell this is very well made. I think I just
Mhm.
was in the wrong mood for it, and I just haven't gotten back to it. And I really wanted to see sound. I mean, I want to see all of them. Sound of Metal looked right up my alley, but just because of my YouTube channel and the way it works on YouTube, that movie got released in the States like 2 months before it was available here. So
Yeah.
by the
Mhm.
time, like, for taking the time to make a video, it wasn't
Mhm.
worth it. So
I feel it. Um,
I'm gonna try and watch all this stuff before the telecast next week. But
oh, dope. Okay, this is gonna be a busy week, man.
yeah,
Okay, so I think everyone is this is a stacked category as well. One weird thing is Lakeith Stanfield is nominated for Best Supporting Actor, even though he is undoubtedly the lead in that movie. The movie's called Judas and the Black Messiah. He's the Judas character. So that's a weird thing. All of them are terrific. I was upset that what's his name from The Five Bloods wasn't nominated.
Delroy Lindo, I'm so mad
Delroy
about that.
Lindo, he was phenomenal. I would have given it to him personally, so that's who I think should have won.
Mhm.
But that being said, the actor who I think is going to win and is still very, very deserving of it is Daniel Kaluuya from Judas and the Black Messiah. Um, he is so terrific in this movie. He has this this kind of southern accent into it, and it's unlike anything that you've ever seen him in. It's so far removed from his character in Get Out, so far removed from his character in what's that movie he did with Viola Davis, where there
Oh, what was that called?
was like a heist movie. Hustlers? No,
Hustlers or Widows? One of those two.
Widows. Yeah, Widows. Yes. But he's on another level here, like the range that he has to play for the character of Fred Hampton. Especially there's one scene in particular that I guarantee is going to be the one they're going to show, when like they're announcing the nominees and they show like a little clip from it. There's a speech that he gives to a crowd of people that I guarantee they're going to play, and it's just like, holy crap. So Daniel Kaluuya is my bet for it. Also, people, if you're making predictions, he won the SAG award, so I think it's a good bet to place.
So that was. I hope we're not going to just say the same person every time. That's going to be
Uh,
embarrassing. But Daniel Kaluuya was kind of my guess because he won the SAG. Because everything I've seen him in, he is unreal. Um, I don't know if you saw his episode of Black Mirror. I think it was the
yes.
second ever episode.
Mhm.
He's phenomenal in that.
Mhm.
I think Was he nominated for Get Out?
No, I forget. I'd have to double check.
Yeah, I
Off the top
can't
of my head, I
remember.
don't know. Yeah.
I think he's got a lot of goodwill. Failing him, I could kind of see it going to Sacha Baron Cohen
Oh, really?
as kind of, I don't want to say like a stunt win, but for for a surprise, for a big surprise, I could see that happening. But I think it's going to be Kalia,
Mhm.
and I'm into it.
Yeah, he was nominated for Get Out as
Okay,
well.
that's what I thought. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so moving on, actress in a leading role, we have Viola Davis for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom,
Mhm.
Andra Day for the United States versus Billie Holiday, Vanessa Kirby for Pieces of a Woman, Frances McDormand for Nomadland, and Carrie Mulligan for Promising Young Woman. What do you think?
Cool. This is the only one I actually haven't seen is Andra Day in the United States versus Billie Holiday. I've been meaning to check that out, so can't comment on her performance in particular. Everyone else, though, I've seen, and again, they're all phenomenal. This is actually a hard one to pick. I'll say right off the bat, the person that won the SAG award was Viola Davis. And like I said, they have a good track record, but every once in a while things kind of differ. And I don't know if it'll differ here. The reason why I say that is because a lot of pundits, a lot of people have been talking about Carrie Mulligan has been winning a lot of awards, a lot of recognition. And so it's kind of neck and neck, and it's hard to say for me. Carrie Mulligan is terrific in Promising Young Women. And Viola Davis is terrific in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I don't know. I think I might go with who would win? I think who's going to win might be Carrie Mulligan. I think that there just seems to be like this talk about it. There seems to be, besides the SAG award, there seems to be a lot of recognition for her role. I would not be surprised if Viola Davis does win, and I think that's my pick of who should win as well. I think that even though surprisingly, since she's the titular character, kind of has a smaller role in the movie, especially compared to Chadwick Boseman. But Viola Davis is, one of the greatest actresses working today. She's a legend, and this is one of her really like more out there, more most transformative roles. So I would give it to her, but I think if I was willing to bet, I'd say Carrie Mulligan might get it.
Okay. I think it's going to go to Frances McDormand.
Ooh, okay.
I mean, she's got 2 already.
Mm-hmm.
I think Nomadland itself has a lot of goodwill towards it.
Yeah.
I think, this is true of Viola Davis too, but I do think historically there has been, the Oscar voters tend to appreciate when, particularly with actresses rather than actors, when they're willing to make themselves look physically unattractive or have their characters be unattractive.
Mm-hmm.
And like Frances McDormand's character and Viola Davis, they make her look very like sweaty and overbearing. And yeah, Frances McDormand, she goes full frontal in the movie. You see her shit in a pail. Like it's a very intimate film in that way. And
that's going to be, can you imagine? I'm sorry to interrupt, but like we're talking about, they show a clip for everybody nominated. Right. It's just like Frances McDormand.
Yep.
Like, oh,
yep. I'm into it. I love it. That's amazing.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that it's going to go to Frances McDormand.
That's a good bet. I mean, she is so good in that movie. I think like any other year, I think it might've been like hers to take. Yeah, so I would not be surprised at all if she takes it.
Moving on, Best Actress in a Supporting Role, we have oh wow, they have the entire
title.
I'm not going to read the whole thing. Maria Bakalova in Borat's subsequent movie film, Glenn Close in Hillbilly Elegy. I believe, I don't know if it was you guys who told me this, I think Glenn Close was nominated for an Oscar and a Razzie for that movie.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's insane. I don't think that's ever happened before.
That's fantastic.
That's amazing. So Maria Bakalova, Borat subsequent movie film, Glenn Close for Hillbilly Elegy, Olivia Colman for The Father, and Amanda Seyfried for Mank, and Yu Jung Yoon for Minari. Chris, who you got?
Again, The only one that I haven't seen is Glenn Close and Hillbilly Elegy. I don't plan on watching that movie. I apologize. Like I might watch Billie Holiday before just to catch up on all of it. I have no interest in Hillbilly Elegy. Sorry, Close. You're a great actress. Everyone's really good. This is also another stacked category, but I think who's going to take it is Yu Jung Yoon,
Okay.
which would be fantastic. I don't believe. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I don't believe that an Eastern Asian actress has ever won an acting award for the Academy. So this would be a historic first. She's just delightful in the movie. It's just and I think that she is in a way kind of the heart and soul of the movie, even though she is very much the supporting character. She kind of plays this matriarchal figure, and she's just terrific. Again, she won the SAG award for it, so I think a lot of other kind of like goodwill going towards it. So I think that she has a really good shot of taking it. So that's my choice.
Okay. I'm gonna say Maria Bakalova.
Interesting.
I think that would be, first off, I think it would just be awesome.
Mhm.
And there is kind of a push for the Oscars to try and be like a little bit more hip. So them even nominating someone from a ridiculous comedy like that is a little bit telling. But also this woman is a force of nature. Like
Mhm.
no one had ever heard of her. She comes out of nowhere. She's in this movie. She's holding her own against seasoned improviser Sacha Baron Cohen. I
Yeah.
might argue that she's funnier in the movie than he is.
Mhm.
It's a bit of a wild bet. I wouldn't put money on it, but that's my call.
No, she is terrific in it. Like you said, she's just a young kid out of nowhere and just crushed it. And I do want to say that I'm not saying that you were suggesting this. I don't think it was. I don't believe it was a stunt casting. I'm a stunt nomination. I think that she is legitimately that good. She's just that good in the movie.
She's amazing in it.
Mm.
Okay, so we're up to best director.
Mhm.
So we have Thomas Vinterberg for Another Round, David Fincher for Mank, Lee Isaac Chung for Minari, Chloe Zhao for Nomadland, and Emerald Fennell for Promising Young Woman. Who you got?
Mm. Another terrific. Everybody's very, very good. Leading into this Oscar race, back in like September, October, I remember talking to my wife, being like, "I think David Fincher's going to get it for sure. It's blah blah blah. Mank. It's about Citizen Kane. It's classic Hollywood. He's a beloved director. How can he not win?" And then I saw Nomadland, and I saw all the love that Nomadland is getting, and I will bet a lot of money that it's Chloe Zhao that's taking it. Nomadland, one just because just looking at looking at other predictions, but other like awards, Nomadland has been just racking up all of the awards, and for good reason, I believe. And I think that Chloe Zhao is a lock for it. Honestly, I think it's deserving too. It's her direction is subtle, it's beautiful, it's very very cinematic, compared to a lot of the other movies like Mank, Another Round, even Promising Young Woman. This is going to sound strange, but Nomadland is the most cinematic. Like so much of it, like you in the way that you can't do this on a stage. You can't do this. It's not going to work the same, even though it's based on a book. It's not the same as like a literary thing. So I think that she's going to get it for sure.
I I totally understand what you're saying. I think it'll go to David Fincher.
Mhm.
And for a lot of what you were saying, Hollywood loves movies about Hollywood.
Mhm.
It loves classic era cinema, and of course, it's about Citizen Kane. It has Gary Oldman, who finally won his Oscar a couple years ago.
Mhm.
David Fincher is one of those directors who's not a blockbuster director, but certainly not an indie director by any stretch of the imagination. But he has indie cred. He's got a sort of indie style. Like his movies feel very, even when they're bigger movies, they feel very small, very intimate. They have sort of an indie sensibility that I think Hollywood appreciates. I don't think he's ever been nominated before.
I think he has.
Has he? Okay, maybe.
Yeah, he was nominated. He was nominated for The Social Network at the very
Oh,
least.
that's right. That's right. Of
Yeah.
course.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's kind of my guess.
Oh yeah, that was like I said, that was my who I thought was gonna win. Not necessarily who I wanted to win, but I thought he was gonna win for the longest time. specifically because the Oscars do have a history of honoring kind of like um it's kind of honoring someone's career with a win. For instance, Al Pacino's notorious win for the movie The Scent of a Woman. A lot of people tout that as sort of the Oscars more of like, okay, we're giving you this because of all of the other great movies that you've done prior, like The Godfathers that you didn't win for, even if this is not your best film. And I
Yeah.
think for David Fincher, he is well liked in Hollywood. Like you said, he's done, he's had successful movies, financially. He's done independent films. He's done critically hailed movies. So I think that even if this is not his best work, I could see the Oscars being like, well, you have a long history, so you deserve it. Yeah, so I think that's a safe bet. I maybe it's cheating. I go based off a lot of like I read a lot of like counting numbers, like how many wins did Chloe Zhao win, and how many wins did David Fincher win, leading like from smaller awards
Mhm.
leading up to it. And so like that's why I'm like, if I were to bet money, I'd say Chloe Zhao. But again, like since everything we just said, if David Fincher wins it, I wouldn't be like, what? I'd be like, yeah, it makes sense.
Right. All right. So finally, we are going to talk about Best Picture. I believe there are 8 nominees this year, and they are The Father, Judas and the Black Messiah, Mank, Minari, Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, Sound of Metal, and The Trial of the Chicago Seven. Who you got?
Um, I like all these movies except really The Trial of the Chicago Seven. I don't dislike it. It's just sort of it's fine. It's good. It's a good movie. I wouldn't have nominated it. I would have nominated either The Five Bloods or One Night in Miami. Yeah. So that's the only one where I'm like, meh. Um, I think that the winner again is Nomadland. Again, this is I could be wrong. I'd have to double check, but I read multiple articles saying that Nomadland is the most uh awarded film leading up to the Oscars in history. In
Wow.
history. And I think with that much momentum behind it, I think it would be one of the bigger shocks of Oscar telecast history if it didn't win. I mean, this is like uh, Parasite was also like last year was like leading with the number of awards that it had leading up to the Oscars in that one. So it's a safe bet. Nomadland just seems like the type of movie that they would pick. I know that the Oscars have a history of like, awarding movies that are about Hollywood. So I think that ordinarily I would think that Mank would have the kind of the edge. However, I've noticed that the Oscars have kind of moved slightly away from that a little bit. I think just to kind of divert expectations. For instance, La La Land did not win Best Picture despite the
Well, it
flub.
did. It did briefly.
It
Yeah.
did for briefly for 5 minutes. But certain other things where I think that Nomadland is much more like this kind of poetic, sad, like you said, it's a character going through like so much trials and tribulations. In a weird way, that seems more Oscar baity than even a movie about Citizen Kane. Um, so I'd say Nomadland is going to take it home.
I am right there with you.
Mhm.
I first saw Nomadland back in September. I saw it through Toronto International Film Festival, and right away, I was like, "This is getting nominated for Best Picture, and it's
Mhm.
probably going to win." And I was
Mhm.
like, I can't make that prediction until I see a whole bunch more movies throughout the rest of the year."
Mhm.
Said it then, saying it now. It's such an Oscar movie, and this is
Mhm.
one of the reasons why I think David Fincher will win for director, because
Mhm.
this movie is like such a lock to win Best Picture.
Yeah, and they do kind of like to split
Yeah.
the director and Best Picture. So that's a good point. I didn't think of that.
All right. Well, that's the show. Um, we want to say thank you guys for watching. Want to encourage you, of course, to do the YouTube thing, the like, the share, the comment below with your thoughts. I do read all the comments. I try and respond to all of them if I possibly can. So please do all of that. Before we sign off, Chris, where can people follow you online?
My Instagram handle is Art of Light and Shadow. It's a fun little daily blog about all the wacky movies that I'm watching. So if you're a big cinema lover, go check it out.
And of course, he wasn't here today. He should be back next week. If you want to check Andris out online, do a YouTube search for Cheap Thrills, Unspeakable Terror. He reviews sort of sci-fi horror B movies from the 50s all the way on up to today. They're very short, they're very to the point. It's a lot of fun. So go check him out there, give him a subscribe. Of course, you're already on my YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, I'd sure love you for it. And of course, if you want to follow me elsewhere, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Courtshake. Again, want to thank you guys very much for watching. We hope you're all safe and healthy during this time, and we will see you again next week. So take care, everybody.
Have a good one, guys. Later.
Mass